Good morning, this is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about light RPGs. Does that mean that the light is streaming through a window or what?
Yes, exactly. We're talking about games that only use light and only refracted light to play.
Okay.
No, we're not talking
You're
about
not
that.
trying to offend people by saying their RPGs are not full, they're only light?
Yes, right. I'm not the term light is not it's not a slight on the quality of game. It means it's rules light. It doesn't have a lot of rules. It's not very complex. So just like crunchiness, we have to define crunchiness. I'll define light as a RPG that is not complex, and the rules there's very little rules compared to more crunchier games.
I think you just offended people with that statement.
No, how's that?
That their game isn't complex?
The rules are not complex. The game, it doesn't matter. The game itself can be any kind of complexity you want to make it, but the rules themselves are not a barrier to entry, right? You're not going to look at a game that is light, what I term light, and say, oh, I got to spend an hour to make a character. See, so that's what I'm talking about. I know you didn't want me using the term light, but that a lot of people use that term in the industry. You gotta use the terms that people use, or make up your own. And I don't feel like making my own up. It's too complex. Light games. We played light games, what I consider to be light games. Why do people like light games?
I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
Well, let's describe light in another way. There are board games. People in the board game hobby. And they have light games. They consider games light, for example, and all that has to do with complexity. Doesn't mean that they're less fun or they're not fun or not as fun. We're never gonna say that Ticket to Ride isn't fun or Splendor isn't fun. But is it as complex as Twilight Imperium? And people who play Twilight Imperium love that game and think it's a lot of fun.
I'm sure it is, but it takes a long time.
So it takes all day, right? Remember, our son's 7th grade science teacher, 8th grade science teacher. I don't remember what grade it was. He was a gamer, and I didn't know. Oh, we kind of had an idea because of his ties, right? He had all these, geek culture stuff. He was really into Star Wars and stuff like that. Anyway, so we happened to see him at a convention that we go to. Well, we used to go to. I know we've been kind of lamenting not going to conventions, but it has been a long time. There's light at the end of this tunnel, people. But anyway, so we saw him at a convention, and it's the only convention he goes to. He only goes to it one day because I think he has like 3 kids, and it's the one day that he gets to go, and he takes his Twilight Imperium under his arm. And though I probably would not want to play all day, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours playing Twilight Imperium 3rd edition, he's happy to take his game, and he sits down, and by the end of a couple hours he has a full table, and he's there all day and all night, and that's all he does. Why did I talk about Mr.
I have no idea.
But he likes complex games, and Twilight 3rd Imperium is a complex game in board games.
So you have to tell me, what are these light games in RPGs?
Okay, so there's some games that I consider RPGs still, and there's some games that I think I sometimes question whether they are a role-playing game or not.
Why?
Well, because they're more like, I don't know. For example, you mentioned this game called Icarus, which is about stacking dice and about building an empire and the collapse of empires. I'm not sure stacking dice and stuff like that is a role-playing game.
That's only part of it, I think.
You're right. I have not read the rules or looked at it.
Because it says you take on the roles of diplomat or scientist, and the events are spurred along by random card draws. They're story cards
and
that are drawn.
It's GM-less, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not sure that's a role-playing game.
It is.
Okay.
It says it is. It says it's a light role-playing game.
That's extremely light. Fiasco is another light role-playing game, also GM-less. And that one is like, their selling point is it's a Coen's movie role-playing game where you play any situation that gets really messed up. And it's just you and your cohorts.
Well, that could be any role-playing game.
Yeah, but it's about something that goes wrong, and it's about what's going wrong and
what you're going to do about it.
And what you're going to do about it. And it's basically...
Well, you can't say that those aren't role-playing games, because if you have story cards and you have to pick up the story, which to me would seem a little bit harder than doing it the normal way. You pick a card and it tells you what story you're going to go with. I mean, not only that, I was reading about Icarus, and it's no matter what, it's gonna your world is gonna collapse, or your civilization is gonna collapse. So it's more about telling the story of how it's what's gonna happen.
A game like that is 10 Candles, right? Which was really popular last year. I think it was last year they came out, maybe a year and a half ago, but it was burning up everybody's podcast, and they were talking about how great of a game it was. And 10 Candles is there's 10 candles. You light 10 candles, and it's about the end of the world and how you deal with that situation.
Oh, that sounds so pleasant. That's a game that Jolene's not going to play.
Yeah, but people love it. I mean, I've heard people rave about it, and I'm just like...
Well, I'm going to tell you a selling point for the Icarus. I think I might need you to buy this game, because you get to build a tower with dice.
We have plenty of dice.
I have a lot of dice I could build a tower with. So
that sounds like a good game, actually. So... I'm thinking more traditional type of role-playing games, and that I want to consider light. People talk about Fate Core as being a light game, and I just do not agree with them. I've already mentioned that before. Now, Fate Accelerated has a lot less rules. It's more streamlined, and I think it fits the light category.
How?
Well,
she says.
I never ran it or played it, but I read the rules and I compared it to Fate Core, and there is just a lot of less rules involved. There's less things that mechanically happen in that game, right? So that's the only basis that I'm running it. And I've run Fate Core, and I've told you and told everybody I run Fate Core, but I eliminate quite a bit of the rules. I take out half the rules, and people who like Fate Core and like Fate, they kind of come into my game, and if they really, really like Fate, they probably really, really don't like my game. But people who never played Fate and are not Fate aficionados, they love my games. I usually run Dresden Files, or what I call Monterey Dresden, because I center it in Monterey, or the setting is Monterey. We're here in California. If you never heard of Monterey, it's a little seaside town, tourist spot, beautiful place, near my hometown. So that's why I set it there. If you've read Steinbeck, any kind of Steinbeck novels, Cannery Row is based in Monterey.
It's not based in Monterey. It is part of Monterey.
It's set in Monterey.
Yes.
The book, Cannery Row, is set in Monterey.
Cannery Row is a street.
Is in Monterey.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't know if it's a street. Is it a street, actually?
I don't know. It had a bunch of canneries on it.
Right. That's why it's called Cannery Row. I don't know. I think it was officially. Anyway, so I ran Fate Core, and I eliminated a lot of the rules, and I like the idea of the aspects.
So you made your own light game there.
Right. I made it lighter simply by eliminating a lot of... I didn't eliminate the rules. I just didn't use them. So I think... so there's that. But a true game that I played by the rules and I consider light would be like Tales from the Loop. Now, the reason I say light, and I think I like those rules, is because I've run at conventions for years and years. I can't remember when it was the first time I ran at a convention.
Anyway.
Probably 91, 92.
Anyway,
I never once thought of making characters at the table. Even though luckily here in Northern California, specifically in Northern California, we have games that run as long as you want, really. Most
you choose how long you want to run it.
Most of the conventions here let you run a game as long as you want. As long as you
between 4 and 8 hours.
And I've seen games run 12 hours.
Yes.
So unlike a lot of places that Jolene, I don't know, I've never taken Jolene, or we've never gone to a convention outside our area, Northern California, and I don't know if she was surprised. I think she was surprised to learn that other conventions, usually they don't put role-playing games in a private room, and they usually only have a 4-hour time slot.
And they make you pay for each game.
Well, not everyone. That's like Gen Con or...
I was shocked by all of these things.
Oh, you were shocked about those other things. So when you have that situation where you're pressed for time, in other places, making characters seems unfeasible because you don't want to spend too much time making a character table if you're so limited on time.
You were running, what's that game with the
Space Opera?
Space Opera, so making a character is probably very complicated.
Yes.
So you
yes.
had all the characters made.
Right.
Well, Tales from the Loop, you can make the character in what? 10 minutes? 10 minutes. And you need to have all the players with you so you can have your wire together
right
moment.
All these connections and stuff like that. And I was a little even though I was running a game in a room, I think I'd slated myself for 6 hours. But I've said this in the past, in local conventions here, most games, the late games, the last game of
the one that starts at 8:00.
Well, sometimes they start at 6. But let's say the last game in the room can run all night because nobody's going to come in and kick you out of the room. So if you start a game at 6 or 8 o'clock and it's supposed to be a 4 or 5 hour game, and your game runs for 10 hours, let's say, because
nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody's going to kind of kick you out. So that's pretty cool about Northern California. But in other places, they actually kick you out of the area that you play in because sometimes they're running in convention halls, and convention halls do not run 24 hours. So
what you're saying is we're very spoiled.
I think we are. I think we're very lucky.
We used to be anyway.
Yes, we used to be. Anyway, so because even though I had so many opportunity to use up a lot of time to make characters, I never did because I didn't. I always thought it would take too much time, especially the games I was running. Space Opera. I don't know what other games.
I think it's more your barrier thing.
What's the barrier thing?
You said something about the light games are easier to get people who haven't played before in.
Yes.
What did you call it?
Barrier of entry.
Barrier of entry.
Yes.
Because if the characters are already made, then it's easier for people to sit down and play
definitely.
the game.
I mean, yeah. I would never think of trying to make characters for Space Opera. It's just too long. Even though I got really good at it, making a character, it would take me 45 minutes to make a character. And that's me, this is years of experience making characters and making hundreds of characters probably by this point. So a brand new person looking at all the list of skills they could get and all this, it would take them forever, 2 or 3 hours, which I wouldn't do to the people who are paying for a convention game. So I would never even thought of it. So even when I ran my version of Dresden Files, I never thought about having characters made at the gaming table. I always, even Fate, which is supposedly you can make characters ad hoc, or what do you call it, at the gaming table, I never did it. Even though I had seen it done at a convention, and it went pretty well.
Okay.
But I did do that finally with Tales from the Loop, simply because it seems so easy. It seems so. They use templates, and basically you could just straight off copy a template, right, from the book. The only thing is, in the template they give you choices, this, or a choice of 3 things that you care about.
It still took 45 minutes to get all the players to have their characters done?
No, it took like 15 minutes at the gaming table. So I ran that Tales from the Loop at a convention, and I was brave enough and took the chance of having characters made at the table. I had multiple copies of the book. I had sheets to help them make characters, and literally in 15 minutes we were up and running playing the game. Supposedly there's other games you can do that, right? There are games like Apocalypse World, and there's a ton of Apocalypse World hacks. And I know there's different terminology. There's hacks. There's, I forget what other terms that change the setting and change the rules. And they have different playbooks, which are like character templates, I guess is what they are. Now, I've never really gone into Apocalypse World. I think I played in one game. I did not have that good of a time. That was probably over 10 years ago. And it was over 10 years ago. And I never played another game. People who like Apocalypse World swear by it. It's really popular. Like I said, because it's so easy to manipulate and hack and change and modify. It's really, really popular. So people use Apocalypse World for a lot of different games, a lot of different genres, a lot of different settings, and stuff like that. So some people consider that a light game and more of a storytelling game.
Okay.
I'm just gonna shoot off a whole bunch.
Well, I think you should talk about this game called Dread. It's a horror game that they use a Jenga tower.
Yes, I actually have played that once with Morgan, and it was really popular. I don't know when it first came out. Do you remember?
No.
Okay, so I played that actually I played that with the Stanford group back when we were meeting in face-to-face games, and it was a lot of fun. And that one's really simple. You have a character sheet that's a regular character sheet. Now, depending on the game you're playing, but it's a horror game. So what happens is it's very good at mimicking that dread, literally the dread of whatever game or the situation that is on hand. So anytime you want to do something, instead of rolling dice like in normal RPGs, you pull a block out of the Jenga tower, and if you do not cause the tower to fall, then you succeed. Simple.
And if the tower falls, you die.
You die.
So you have to have more than one character?
Well, in the game that Morgan was playing, because he runs it pretty deadly, we had multiple characters that you could play.
Choose from,
right. And the characters were really simple. I think that's another aspect of Dread, is that the games are the characters sheet is real simple. There's only a few skills. It kind of reminded me, remember that Goblin game we played, where we played goblins?
Yes, I do remember that.
Kobolds or goblins?
I don't know.
The kobolds ate my baby?
It was, yeah.
That was Shannon ran that, and we were like, are you really? I kind of shocked that he would want to run that kind of game, because it was kind of whimsical and crazy, and seems like a more serious gamer, but obviously it was a different side of Shannon. That
it was funny.
And then he likes killing off characters, and I think that's another plus for him.
Well, that's an easy game to die in. I died so many times, my name warped into some bizarre name.
I think you were just changing the first letter of your name?
I was adding letters. Yes.
Yes. I think I was pretty lucky. I think I had a very good character. I was really trying to stay alive, because being an old-time gamer, your character shouldn't die. And I got a bad roll. It croaked right away. But Dread is fun, though. Dread is a neat mechanic. I like the idea of how it transfers this simple idea of pulling the block and making it, and it being a horror game. It's like the tension, right? When that tower is full of all kinds of holes.
You know you're going to die?
Well, you don't know you're going to die, but it really is a risk to pull a block out of there. And I think I took pictures of the Dread Tower that we had before it fell a couple of times, and it's amazing how that tower can stay standing. Very interesting.
So basically, for lighter games, the idea that you're coming about with is that character creation is easier because there's not so many choices, and that then you haven't gotten to the rules, the actual rules, like how you roll the dice and stuff.
I'm guessing that if creating characters is really easy, then the rules mechanic is also going to be pretty easy. It's going to be pretty basic.
Like Tales from the Loop?
Like Tales from the Loop.
What's the mechanic?
It is a dice pool system, right? So you have a trait, and you have like an attribute, like let's say wits, and you have a skill, let's say computers. And
you combine your dice.
And you combine those two numbers. Like if you have a wits of 2 and your computers is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5. You roll 5
Thank
dice.
you for the math lesson.
Well, that's how basic it is. I mean, it's insulting, but that's how basic it is. You just get those two numbers.
And you have to get a 6.
And you have to get a 6.
Which you would think would be easy, but it's not always
we've talked about Tales from the Loop. And, we've had Bay, with considerably unlucky. He rolled, he had a dice pool of 8. He didn't get a single thing. And in that game, you have a push mechanic. So you could always re-roll your dice if you want to take a condition. Like, if you're chasing somebody and you have a dice pool of 8 and you're trying to knock them down or something, then you roll your dice. But it fails. So you take a condition called tired. And then you get to re-roll all your dice And Bay was unlucky enough that he failed both his rolls.
But then if you, once you have those conditions, then you don't get you don't get to roll as many dice, or you're just
Correct. You have like 4 or 5 conditions. I forget exactly how many, but every time you take a condition, it's a -1 die on all your rolls.
so if you only have 2 dice or 1 die, then you may not be able to do something.
I think you always get to roll 1 die no matter what.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So the less rules or the easier the rules system
Right.
is, the lighter the game is.
Right.
Or if you're drawing story cards, then it's going to be really light.
Well, that's even lighter, yes. And I think we just recently played Liminal, which is I consider a lighter game. It's not exactly light because, well, I don't know. It only has literally 10 pages of rules.
Yes, but there's lots of choices when
Yes.
you're creating your character.
Yes.
And it changes everything. Changes what you can do and can't do.
Well, I think in that sense, it is a little bit more complex and not as light, but the rule mechanic is super easy. It's 2
Yes,
6-sided
yeah.
splits. You need to roll 8. You get to add your skill. Bada bing, bada boom.
When he told me that and the only other game I played where you had 2 dice was Traveler, I was like, are you sure it's a light game? Because
So what do you think? You think compared to Traveler, which kind of uses the same mechanic?
Traveler has charts though after
Okay, you're right.
for you to roll your dice.
I'm just saying, compared to 2, you think Liminal is a lighter game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember.
I can't compare the 2, but yes, Liminal is a lighter game.
Well, I don't know Paul Mitchell personally, but I'm sure he's been. I think I read his profile somewhere.
Oh God,
on his
please
Kickstarter.
don't.
No, but he's been a long time gamer, right?
Yes.
So he has, Traveler. I don't know how long Traveler was in 1977. So how much role playing experience did Mark Miller before he made up those rules? I don't know. Maybe since D&D was around. Let's say it's 1974. So you had 2, 3, 4 years to play with or read and understand RPGs. Paul has been playing. I don't know how long he's been playing, but let's say he's been playing since he was a kid, and he has 20 years of playing games and reading rules, and that's a lot of experience just in that. I mean, I think even anybody who has been playing for any length of time, if they were to write rules, though, it's debatable.
No, I wouldn't write rules.
But let's say if we were to write a role-playing game, our endeavor or our attempt would probably be, what is it? Probably be slightly better than people who first started writing rules in the late 70s.
I don't know. Rules are really hard to write.
Well, the explanation rules, that kind of stuff, to explain or write how rules should be written. And I think that's a big plus, right? When you have lots of years of experience in playing and reading rules and even developing your own rules, right? Not everybody, but a lot of role players, if they've been playing for a while, they have home brews and house rules that they tinker with the game because it doesn't quite do what they want it to do, no matter what game they're playing. So that as they tinker and stuff, they develop skills of how to explain rules, even if it's only to explain the rules to their friends.
Yes,
at the table.
I agree.
Yes. So games that you said that along light games, some games have taken light to be like ridiculously light, and some people call these micro RPGs that fit on one page.
Everything. Okay.
All the rules. So there's this game called few years ago called Lazers and Feelings.
Okay.
And you only have 2 stats, lasers and feelings, right?
Okay.
And you have a number, it's between 2 and 5 that represents both. You don't get 2 stats numbers, you just 2. And you roll a 6-sided die to succeed or not succeed.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
That's way too light.
I knew you were gonna like it.
You gotta have at least 2.
So
I'm sorry, but that's.
it fits on one page. Here it is.
I don't need to see it.
So what's interesting about this game is I've never played it. Honestly, but it says literally the rules are on one page, and half of it is for the GM side of the.
Is that a starship?
Yes.
That looks like the Enterprise.
Yeah, it's kind of it can't really be the Enterprise because that
Obviously
would be
not.
copyright infringement. But it has a certain Tresk-esque.
It resembles it.
A Tresk-esque. No, because it's not a full circle or.
Yeah,
or
that taking off
there's
that.
little cutouts.
Yeah.
So it's funny because it is really like a 3-step, 4-step process to make a character, and then if you want to, you roll dice. You can add. Well, you do get bonus dice, so you don't just one roll die. You roll multiple dice, so it might be fun for you. So you get bonus dice if you're prepared. You get a bonus dice if you're an expert, right? And then you roll this set of dice, and what happens is if you're using lasers, which represents science and reason, you want to roll under that number. Okay. Remember the number you pick it.
Whatever.
From 2 to 5. And if you're using feelings, which represents rapport, your passion.
So you'd want to pick 3, so you would have a chance to roll under or over it.
We gave you the system. You're right. And if you're using feelings, you want to roll over that number, and that's it. If none of your dice succeed, you
don't get to do what you want.
It's screwed up. Nothing happens. If 1 dice succeeds, you barely managed to succeed. If 2 dice succeed, you did a good job. And if 3 dice succeed, then you did a really good job and you get a bonus of something or other. And boom, that's all there is to the game.
Okay.
That's the rules.
Okay.
So what's really interesting, I think this guy who wrote it, I'm not sure it's the guy, but I'm pretty sure it is. This person who wrote it, let's just say, he put it out and it's a free download. You don't have to pay for it, and people can hack the heck out of it. So
because there's only 1 page, so you kind of have to add stuff to it, right?
Well, you don't have to add hack it as in make another game. So there's another one called Whiskers and Claws.
Well, okay.
So basically, you can use the same mechanic and everything, and change the setting by simply changing the 2 things that you're using, right? Whiskers and Claws represents you playing an animal, maybe
a cat. I'm thinking.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It could be a bird. Whiskers. Oh, whiskers.
Birds don't have whiskers. Well, right. Some might, but.
So, what do you think of that? That is pretty cool.
Well, I think the thing about light games is, and they may have come about for people that didn't like crunchy, but also for. I was reading about it. A lot of people like light games for introducing kids or first-time role players.
Right.
So that makes sense that you don't want to have too many rules. Like the guy who tried to get his wife to play with him, and she couldn't get through the Pathfinder character making process and decided that this wasn't the hobby for her.
Right.
And to his great horror, she didn't want to play with him anymore, right?
Nothing. No. I think to this day she has not played, and that was
I could understand that
ago.
if you make it too complicated.
What was your first game that you played? Traveler?
My first game was Gamma World.
Gamma World. Yes.
When my brother was 11 and got it for Christmas.
Right. He got it for Christmas.
Yep.
That's right. That's it. That's probably worth some money if he kept the box and everything.
He may have. I don't know, but I don't have it. He does.
So I think you're right. I think there's all kinds of reasons to have light games in your library, right? They're really good at introducing new players, introducing children, or young kids to RPGs.
Which I'm not saying that you have to have light games to introduce kids, because I've played Pathfinder with little kids. You just have to be more creative in which rules you use and which rules you don't, and what you get to roll. And kids love to roll dice, right?
That's right. You actually ran Pathfinder that one time.
And
full table of 13 kids.
And we didn't, and I did modify the rules just so, and I told the boys that were helping me if they just let them roll the dice and let them make their roll, because they were like 6-year-olds, so everybody got to do something.
Yeah.
So it's not so much you want to introduce kids and have them have fun. It doesn't matter if there is a big if it's a light game or a complicated game. When you're playing with 6-year-olds, you're not going to make it. You want to make it as fun as possible, right? So you can use what rules you want, and what rules you don't want, you don't have to use.
Well, when I introduced Augustine to role-playing game, it was just me and him. I didn't really use real rules, because at the time, he was 4.
He was like 4.
4, so he was in 2007.
You just made him count the numbers on the dice.
Right. So it was real basic. He had 3 attributes that I just ripped off D&D, and the number of the level of the attribute was what how many 6-sided dice he needed to roll, and I gave him a target number, and And then basically I was trying to make him count. So he would count the dots, the pips on the dice, and then he would have to go over a certain number to succeed. And that's all it was. It was, there was
That's
no
the way
skills.
that we still play, right?
Right. It was all based on
You
attributes.
have to roll 2 dice and get an 8.
Yes. So I think so I was just making stuff up, even as a young kid, even as a young kid for my son. And then when his friends joined, they played Star Wars, but I used the same system, which was like literally 3 attributes, and everything they did was based on those attributes.
And then once they started reading Pathfinder, that was it,
Right.
because then they became mini-max or
Yes.
crazy people that wanted to kill stuff and
Right.
take their stuff.
Loot the bodies. And I think, when kids are that enthusiastic about playing, or anybody is really enthusiastic about playing, I don't think it's a problem. There's hardly a barrier to entry, right? Augustine really wanted to play because he saw his dad playing, and his dad had a group of friends that always played, and he was there right next to us and played. We didn't make him leave the room, and he wasn't a boisterous child anyway, so he wasn't make noise. He would sit on Chris's lap.
Yeah, he would sit on the guy's lap.
And we, they let him roll dice when he was old enough, and instead of sticking them in his mouth, and so and he would get bored of just doing that, and he would go off, but he would come back. I understand that. I remember being a little kid wanting to do what my older brothers and sisters did, and I think that's why I was so geared to playing games, because they used to play Monopoly and poker, and I remember being a 4 and 5-year-old playing poker, throwing in money and knowing what the cards meant. And now I didn't quite understand the complexity of like the odds of getting a straight when I had 4 cards and I needed that one.
But you were having fun because your brothers and sisters were doing it.
And I had a lot of, what do you call it? There was a lot of
helpers.
No, they just taught me the rules and showed me how to play, and then they let me on my own. And the same thing with Monopoly. They didn't pull any punches. Not that I remember, but they might have been.
They probably did, and you didn't know it.
And I didn't know it. No, they were pretty brutal.
They still are.
Yeah. If you have people who are driven to want to play games, then there's hardly a barrier of entry. You don't need to coax them into playing. Now, there's people out there who are like, kind of interested, but I don't know, it's really hard or something like that. Then with that kind of attitude and those kind of people, playing or introducing them to with a light game might be the ticket into their hobby. And it's just like board games, right?
Well, they say that if you're going to introduce new people to a role-playing game, make it short, make it easy, and make sure that they're having fun, so that their first experience isn't, a dreadful experience, and they'll never want to come back
just
again.
like that girl who's trying to make a character for Pathfinder.
Yes. And all I have to say is when it's the same playing board games with kids. If you don't want your kids to beat you when they grow up, don't play board games with them when they're little. But when they're little, don't, you sit down and you play the game with them, and your friend says, I'll go easy on them, and then he doesn't go easy on them, and you have crying kids is not what you want, right?
Right. I think you're right. Much like the board games hobby, you don't want to start with Twilight Imperium.
No.
Unless somebody's super enthusiastic about board games and is super enthusiastic about learning complex games. A lot of people in the board game hobby have what they call gateway games, right? Games that they use to introduce people.
Saul's gateway game is Ticket to Ride.
Right. Usually, even though a lot of people don't like Ticket to Ride, a lot of gamers don't like Ticket to Ride. And I'm using air quotes. Real board gamers don't like Ticket to Ride because, for whatever reason, because it's too popular.
I don't know.
Because it's too popular, right? And they need to be cool and
whatever,
not like the popular stuff. They want to go, they want to be the punk where everybody's a prep. But Ticket to Ride is an excellent game because it's super easy. It's not Monopoly. It's not, it doesn't.
But it's complex enough that it'll keep your attention.
Right, but it's not complex enough that it's going to drive them with all these decisions they have to make.
Right.
Which I like about Ticket to Ride. There's 3 things you need to do on your turn. Pick up more cards.
You don't have to tell everybody right now, dude.
Pick up more cards, claim a route, or get more tickets. Don't put your head on the microphone. It makes noise. It's still making noise. Okay. So exactly. I use that example. I always use Ticket to Ride as an example because it is so easy and it's kind of cool because they have nice little components and stuff. But there's other games out there which are very much like, Ticket to Ride, and just like that, there are rules like games that are really good to introduce people who.
Well, not only people
RPGs.
Who are new, but also just to the old people that play D&D all the time or play something else. It might be an easy way to introduce them to,
Right.
A different kind of game.
Or just a different genre, right?
Yeah.
You know, we were playing Liminal the last few weeks, and the players really like it because it's very, I think they like it because it's unlike
The
D&D,
usual.
the combat, take their money and take their stuff and kill the item.
Well, considering we had 1 week of just one fight scene, and everybody had a total blast doing that.
Right.
And then the next week we were trying
Clues.
to figure out how to not die by
Did
ghosts.
you guys get in a fight the last game?
No.
No, not even a fight. Wow.
So there you go.
RPG light games, I think they're fun. I think they're great for introducing players, for kids, for one shots, and some of them are really good. You can even make whole campaigns out of. So they're really versatile. They're really neat, and I think that's why there's so many of them out there.
There you go. Go find one. Find somebody to play with. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul,
and Jolene.
you have a good day.